So here we are for part 2. So let's start with this, because
Yeah.
I think it's in the back of everyone's mind. And I'm sure you're the same. Do you feel scared?
Yeah.
And you just kind of go, no. But that doesn't really sound brilliant to answer that question like that. You sound like you're a bit lacking in intelligence and all the rest of it. And then you feel you have to explain yourself and all the rest of it. But the fact of the matter is, no.
No, and neither do I. I mean, the other question is, should you feel scared?
Well, actually,
I don't know.
Funny enough, I was going to say that. The odd time that you realise that all those people who ask that question all the time and go, I could never do your job or right. I mean, when something occurs, which isn't very frequent or whatever, but then you go, how stupid am I to be doing this?
Yeah.
Like, how incredibly stupid am I? You know, you might have got a threat or a death threat or something from some big organisation, and you're going, oh my God, what am I doing? What have I done?
Yeah.
What choices have I made? You know, now it passes that and you kind of get back to normal. But that question, even the asking of that question, I'm kind of looking at somebody now going, how can you think that to ask?
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, look, I simply don't feel like that. But, and of course, there is a reason, is that it isn't...
Other things terrify me, by the way.
Yeah.
Mice.
Yeah. Birds.
The thought of a tiny little mouse being anywhere near me.
Yeah.
And now a rat and I'm gone. I'd be gone. Birds flapping around me, don't particularly like them either. Not afraid of spiders. Heights, absolutely terrified. If ever you really want to, you know, amuse yourself, you'd stick me on one of those big wheel things.
Yeah.
I cannot explain to you the terror I feel as I cling. I can't look out, down, any which way.
So now you know. Now you know how to get a Nicola talent.
They're my fears.
Look,
and what about you?
Well, I mean, I like. Look, I think.
Don't have any.
No, I'm sure I do. I'm just kind of think I don't.
Are you afraid of spiders?
I'm not afraid of spiders. No.
Oh.
I have my own anxieties, absolutely. But that sort of thing about people are coming
to get you.
I don't have that.
No, I don't.
And I don't. And, you know, and there's a reason. I think it is also logical. Most people, even people that are involved in crime, accept that, you know, journalists are going to write about them. And I think we are on Crime World, although I'm sure there are many people who disagree. We do not try to be personal or mean about people. We're talking about crime, and that is, I think most people in a normal society, even people that are involved in criminality, accept these are issues that have to be discussed. I'm sure there's people who can take offence at things that have been said, absolutely. But I don't feel, you know, I don't feel...
You'd have chosen a different type of journalism.
No.
The only thing I do find curious about crime journalism is that you're always expected to immediately defend yourself.
Yeah, but I think that's true of all journalists. I think...
Oh, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think a political journalist has to defend what they actually do.
No, I think that is definitely not true. If you look at how they are approached on Twitter, they're constantly told that they're selling
by the public.
Yeah.
But crime journalists are asked why they do what they do by other journalists.
Yes, and I mean...
regularly. And you kind of go, well, because it's a valuable... sort of
I think
element of society that we need to talk about. We need to have it on the agenda. People are interested, and we actually need to sort of embrace the fact that this isn't just a black and white issue, that society is actually the cause of a lot of this. But I mean, I was only recently on an interview with Anton Savage, and he repeatedly asked me, you know, basically, why do you do what you do? A, it's a job, and B, because crime is as valuable a thing for us to know about than anything else. And again, kind of like, do you think you're glamorizing it? Like, I don't think any other journalist of any other genre is asked, do you glamorize sport? Do you glamorize politics? Do you glamorize...
I think there's...
I think weird to me.
Well, I think you'd find that attitude from very particular publications and outlets, where I do think there is a sense in some parts of the media that crime is, you know, hold your nose as you talk about it, that they would be fair to be talking about, you know, dull speaking rights, and they think that should be the biggest story all the time. And I think they get pissed off when...
I think those days are gone, though, surely. I mean,
but I think they do get pissed off that that's not the number one issue
Yeah.
in the minds of the public. And I know as soon as you started to see the internet figures coming up where people would see, they had this great story on something a minister has said, and they would be sickened when they
or an
would see,
exclusive interview with a minister or
yeah,
something.
and
then
they'd be sickened when they saw somebody hit somebody else in the head with a hatchet was bombing up on top of it on the internet.
But people
And
were more interested.
Well, there would be a sense that this isn't right, and the public are wrong, and there's a sense that if you didn't glamorize it and give them funny names, they'd be more interested in this.
But what does that even mean, glamorizing it? Because
what they mean is, I think, is that they find it a bit tacky, and they don't want the public to like it, to like hearing about it. And that's just
people
the way it
used
is.
to say that about, say, even we spoke about recently, Love Hate, that it glamorized crime. I don't think there was anything glamorous about it.
Well, you see,
I mean, I thought it was a very good look into that, the exterior of what you see, but actually delve beneath, just scratch beneath the surface, and you see the absolute ugliness of that world in all its ways. So what's glamorous?
Well, you see, it's not that it's, it's a funny thing, right?
It's that it's even on a drama.
Yeah, it's even on a drama. Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's this kind of like, you can say it's this sweeping statement. It's glamorizing it. In other words, it shouldn't be on. We shouldn't be.
Well, I mean, I suppose the interesting thing is that if you look at adolescence, like that's been widely greeted by the liberal media or whatever. This is exactly the type of program they want to make about crime. That, that's what they want. That's how they want crime to be presented. Basically the internet made the kids do it. So they're comfortable with that.
Who's they?
The people that are reviewing it, the politicians want it shown in schools. All of the newspapers think this is brilliant, and it is a great program, so I'm not knocking the program. But there's a real comfort with the narrative that is there. There's a discomfort with the narrative of Love Hate, where you have people doing criminal acts that are both good and bad people in their core. And that's a long-term phenomenon with the mafia programs in mafia films in the 80s, where there was the same argument was made, because you're showing these guys being wealthy and living, and being of, an attractive personality on some levels, even if they are causing violence and mayhem, that was in some way letting the side down. So crime is political, I suppose, in how people perceive it. And there are certain narratives that people want, and you get them from both the left and the right. There's right-wing narratives that want a certain narrative about maybe immigrants causing crime, and on the left they want a narrative about a different thing. But, crime is committed by humans, and they are coming from all sorts of places with all sorts of stories. And we just try and tell them, and people can give out, but, it is what it is.
We're glad we stuck to this career and that we didn't
go into the Royal.
I certainly am glad. With the Royal Correspondent, Nicola, I don't think so. We should have tried it for a while.
Maybe we should go back.
There was one here I wanted to ask you about. Yes, this is an interesting one, and actually it's given me an idea that maybe we should bring. We've been speaking recently with Christy Mangan. He's working with us on the Crime World team here. He's working on some of the cold cases, one of which we're going to launch in the month of April, the murder of Emer O'Loughlin, which is called Evil Eye. It's an 8-part podcast, and we've made a video as well for our YouTube channel. But Christy had, apart from wandering the globe with me now, trying to, kick up something new in these cold cases, he did have a lengthy career, over 40 years in Garda Síochána, and where he finished up was Drogheda, which he had hoped for a kind of a quiet enough landing into retirement, but where he found himself right in the middle of the Drogheda feud. So the question is, do you have any updates on Drogheda and the scene there? And that's interesting because it has quietened down, obviously, but there's been, like, actually, if you look at it now, some of those protagonists have had the most extreme and bizarre deaths.
Yeah.
There's still some suspects who were highly involved in it on the run. We were only wondering when they would come back, they would be very sort of local, colloquial people to stay away for so long. It's hard to stay on the run.
Well, it's hard to stay on the run unless you have a lot of money. While there was definitely money made on both sides of that feud, these people were never multimillionaires. So, there's two relatives, let's put it that way, who are on the run.
They would have been on the side that we call the anti-Maguire side.
They would have been regarded as the leaders of that side.
So that basically, that was a little bit like the Kinahans. It was one mob under the Maguire sort of Cornelius Price faction. They would have been the two bosses really there that came together, Cornelius Price and Owen Maguire. And they had a load of young underlings working with them and for them, who sort of thought, do you know what? We're not working for these guys anymore. We want to set up on our own. It happens as the cocaine is booming in that very wealthy commuter town of Drogheda, very well located between Dublin and Belfast. Affordable housing sort of brings the young middle class to the area. The population expands. And of course, they're working with money in their pocket. And like everywhere else in the country, they start to take cocaine recreationally, which makes this industry, this underground industry in the town, a lot more lucrative and causes that grouping to split and the ambitious sort of underlings to try and go it alone.
Yeah, and they are sponsored by a couple of people who sort of stay one step away from them, including Richie Carberry, who was ultimately shot dead. So they have that kind of backup, and they have that source, somebody who can wholesale cocaine to them and sort of sponsor them through their rise to power. But those two guys are still out of the country. They certainly spend time in a lot of time in Spain. It is believed they've been in Dubai. There was talk of them being in Mexico, but I think that was more of a holiday. So they are really the two people that were so central to that feud that remain out of reach of the Gardaí. A lot of the other people who were associated with that gang, who we can't really go into, a lot of those people are now facing criminal charges. Some of them for, relatively minor amounts of money, but the guards are mopping them up. Let's put it that way. The level of violence has certainly decreased. On the other side, the Maguires have been hit. The broader Maguire operation has been hit by the Criminal Assets Bureau. There's had proceeds of crime cases taken against a number of people. Obviously, Cornelius Price died of natural causes. He had a kind of a network around him in the UK, but also here he had a kind of sort of ruled them in a very sort of terrifying way. He had guys around him, some of them who had bad drug problems, who he really was forcing into doing his bidding. And once he is out of the picture, those guys have tended to fall away, and some of them have ended up in prison. But I suppose you can see, often we get said to us, what's the point in locking these guys up because somebody else just takes their place? But in somewhere like Drogheda, if you do take out a number of people, and obviously people like Robbie Lawler have been killed and are out of the picture in that way, if you do take out that core gang, all of a sudden that community can live in peace again. And of course, it may be that somebody will take up that mantle in a period of time. But in the intervening period, all of that, which there was this constant arson attacks going on in that Drogheda area.
I think, is an area blueprint of what can happen in any town, to be honest with you, because it's not only the local groupings that are there, but they come in from outside. Sometimes to support with logistics, with money, with drugs and with guns, one side against the other, because they, bigger players see bigger profits to be made if the ones they back win the town as such. It's a clear trajectory from those arson attacks into sort of the threats against girlfriends and everything, how this escalates and eventually results in a number of murders. Obviously, Drogheda was particular because you had the murder and dismemberment of Cian Mulready Woods, a young 17-year-old who also got tied up in it all. And you had those very scary figures of Robbie Lawler and Cornelius Price, who were really both capable of doing anything and did do many things. But ultimately, while it's concentrated on a small town north of Dublin, there's tentacles in from all over the country into what's happening in Drogheda.
Yeah, there is. And there is those connections.
And you see what happens as well to the business community there, because it is a very, prosperous town, Drogheda.
Yep.
I think the kind of surrounding area of Drogheda has a population of maybe upwards to 100,000. I think that the town itself is something like 40,000. This big industry have come in there to tap into that workforce, which is a very educated, middle class, upcoming workforce. And those businesses were being threatened. And, the Chamber of Commerce had to come forward and say, we're on the news and the map for all the wrong reasons here. What investor is going to come to this town? So the level of kind of damage a feud can do on any of these towns is, it could literally happen anywhere. And it blew up so quickly in Drogheda.
It blew up so quickly because there were these older gangland figures like Robbie Lawler and Cornelius Price who were able to escalate it and put weapons in the hands of people to come up with plans, to have those connections, to have that kind of know-how, I suppose, to carry these things out. But it de-escalated as well. But in Drogheda, I think, in particular, there was these constant waves of intimidation and arson attacks, many of them that never made any newspaper. And the families were being routinely targeted. And although, as you said, it's a large surrounding area, sort of townland, it was really focused on a couple of estates and people lived in absolute terror. So it has de-escalated. There are further criminal proceedings. But yeah, there's two guys out there that have yet to be dealt with. There is always talk that they've made further connections abroad and that they still hold a hand in what's happening back in Drogheda. But yeah, I'd imagine their time will come.
No, we should definitely revisit that and actually, tell it in a very chronological fashion, really, and delve into those areas that we've spoken about, the effects of it and how it escalated and all the rest of it. So I suppose, listen, we leave it at that because the aircon isn't on in here. We're both about to collapse.
Yeah.
And
look out for your next royal feature.
Look out for your royal feature by the Royal Correspondent, Nicola and Niall. It would kind of suit me, Royal Correspondent. I'm sure it would open a lot more doors than I write about.
The title would suit you, the work wouldn't.
The work wouldn't. So in the meantime, anybody listening, and keep the questions coming in because we've plenty to say, obviously, but we always sort of think we know what you want to hear. This way, the Q&As, you get to set the narrative. You get to ask us what you want. Send in your questions to crimeworld@sundayworld.com or direct message to any of the Crime World social media. Twitter, we have Instagram, we have... Can you send a message on TikTok? I'm new to TikTok.
Well, yeah, but I'd prefer if you didn't. It's a bit difficult to go through.
NASA says no. So we'll send it on Instagram or you can send it to myself and Niall, either on our own personal accounts. Yeah. But seriously, who couldn't remember that email? crimeworld@sundayworld.com.
There you go.
It's easy.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.